Tonight's DJNTV show is sponsored in part by Electro Voice, DJ Event Planner, ADJ, NLFX Professional, Promo Only, and DJNTV Insiders.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
It's the PhDJ Podcast. The PhDJ Podcast. Featuring Mike Walter. And Joe Bunn. Two industry veterans who've seen it all and are willing to talk about it each and every week.
When we have further information, we'll pass it on to you.
The PhDJ Podcast is brought to you by Electro Voice. And Roll It. And now, get ready. It's Mike and Joe.
Welcome, everybody, to the PhDJ Podcast. My name is Mike, and filling in for Joe Bunn this week is my good friend from Dallas, Texas. Say hello, Glenn Roush.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing great.
Yeah? Are you in that? No, you're not in Dallas, right? You're outside of Dallas?
I am down south of Austin in a little town called New Braunfels.
You actually look like, if you're watching this on video, Glenn looks like he's hunkered down in like some basement, like post-apocalyptic kind of thing. Where are you right now?
It's our house comes with a party barn.
Oh, okay.
And so we've got an actual, well, you can't
see that looks more fun. The pool table looks more fun.
Yeah,
I like that.
So I use the pool table because it worked for the height and keeping my laptop so I didn't have to touch anything.
Gotcha.
Versus when we tried to shoot a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I was doing it with my phone and my hand was shaking because I was so nervous. So
Glenn just mentioned that, and I just want to give a little preview, especially if we come across at any point in this podcast as if it's been rehearsed, because we did this all 2 weeks ago. And Joe was on that call, but it's been kind of a comedy of errors getting Glenn on. We actually recorded you 2 weeks ago. We did a whole podcast, and then for some reason it didn't save the I don't know what happened. Joe sent it to me, and it was the wrong episode and everything else. So then we set up this time and date, and then at the last minute Joe couldn't make it. So I made an executive decision to say, you know what, Joe, you can skip a week. I don't want to put Glenn. Glenn's been nice enough to record once with us, which we screwed up, and now he's set some time aside while you're on another family vacation here. Is that right?
No, this is where I take my full-time staff. And
this is more of a staff. All right, very cool.
Yeah,
right.
So this is the spot in the summer where Dallas is really pretty dead because it's
120 degrees and humid and nobody wants to do anything.
Yeah. Now today it's actually going to be a lovely 100 degrees.
Oh, but it's down to 100.
Usually in August we can hit 105, 106 pretty easy. So not a lot of events, and so I take my staff away for a couple of days, and we come down and float the river and just kind of have some team building time hanging out together. That's
awesome. So let's go there first, because a couple weeks ago that was one of our questions, but we didn't get to it right away. I've spent a lot of time with you and your crew. You've brought me down a few times, and I've worked with your guys, and we've gone to Cowboy games, which is one of the reasons why when Glenn says, hey, you want to come down, I'm like, tell me, as long as it's between September and December. Like, I have no interest in going to Dallas in May, but if it's a weekend where I could catch a Cowboys game, absolutely. You have a very tight relationship with your crew. Obviously, you're taking them floating now this week.
Yeah.
Does that ever infringe upon your ability to manage them? Talk about that balancing act, because that's a question I get all the time.
It does at times. There are definitely situations and times where it can be very challenging and stressful. And honestly, Jennifer, my wife, will point it out because I'll be carrying a lot of extra stress on me. I'll just be a little tension bomb for a day. And finally, the solution I've kind of come up with is, and I think, Mike, we've talked about it before, is I heard Dave Ramsey talk about it, where he talks about teaching an entrepreneur how to talk to your son or daughter if they come to work for the company, to be able to say, okay, now I'm wearing my boss hat, now I'm wearing my dad hat. And I do the same thing with my employees. I just tell them, like, okay, look, we're really good friends, but right now I'm taking my friend hat off, I'm putting my dad or my boss hat on, and I'm just strictly talking to you as your boss, as the owner of the company. You messed up. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to do to fix it. And then and then I just kind of have to finish with I still love you. we're still cool, but we got to fix this.
Right. Yeah, I think I use the same hat thing, so I don't know whether I heard it from you or you heard it from me or I heard it from Dave Ramsey or we both heard it from Dave Ramsey, but I have literally had conversations, and I'm in my office right now, I'm not down in my basement, where I've sat people down in this office and I've said, look, man, I got to take my friend hat off for a second and put my boss hat on because, you know, there's been a problem here and we have to fix it. And I can't have you leaning on, but dude, we're cool. We just went to the Met game the other night and, you know what I mean? You were in my bridal party and, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff. And I think the pros outweigh the cons when it comes to that. Would you agree with me?
I fully agree, because I think that if done right and if it comes from a genuine place, if you communicate it properly, your team understands. Your team understands that you can still be close and have a great relationship with them, and sometimes have to be the heavy, have to be the bad guy, because they know that it's our role as the owner, as the boss.
Right.
And I think as long as we just do it properly, and, you know, I don't, you know, dog cuss them out or do anything crazy like that, but just there are times that you have to have a real conversation, just like for those of you that are listeners that are parents. You know, I'm a parent. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and, you know, them being that little, they're super cute, but then they do stuff that I'm like, okay, we got to stop that. And
Right.
the discipline part's hard.
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm not a parent myself, but I've seen that with some parenting where you do have to do the same thing. You want to love your children and be supportive and be close to them, but there are times where you have to be the disciplinarian. And in the end, it's for everybody's best interest. You can't just always be the good guy.
Well, and I have two boys. They do some funny stuff that they're not supposed to do sometimes. So luckily, Jennifer will step in sometimes and be the heavy, because I'm over there just laughing.
You have 2 adorable boys, by the way,
Oh, thanks.
and a beautiful wife. Again, my wife and I were down in Dallas earlier last year, and we had a nice breakfast with your family, and yeah, awesome, good times.
They're super entertaining.
Yeah. So I have talked a lot on this podcast, and I wrote about it in my book about the different places that I look for to find talent. I've talked about how I've recruited teachers and singers. If I see somebody singing in a coffee house, and I think they have talent. I have never thought to recruit a mascot, and that is your background, and it fascinates me every time you tell this story. So tell us about before you DJ'd, right? You were a mascot for a number of different teams. You even did it professionally. Tell us about that experience, and how did it shape your entertainment savvy, if you will?
Yeah, no. So everybody always wants to know how I got into it, and the answer is not very good. It was just the cheerleaders in high school asked me to do it, and
I think that's the greatest answer ever.
Yeah, well, and I was like hanging around with pretty girls. Yeah, I'm in on that. And I always like to kind of cut up and be the class clown. So I got recruited to do it. I did it in high school. I loved it. So I did it at Baylor. And then while I was at Baylor, I was there during some really, really bad sports years. And our football team just used to get shellacked. And so we hosted the University of Oklahoma, OU, and they beat us like 66-3 or something insane like that. And their sports writer wrote in the alumni magazine that the best part of the game was watching the Baylor mascot entertain the crowd. And so there was a Minnesota alumni of OU, and they had an opening, and they were like, you should call this guy. And before I knew it, I was the Minnesota Timberwolf. So
that, as you're telling that story, it actually makes me think. So is that the same as when we as DJs, and maybe I'm the only one that ever admits to this, but have a rough event and hardly anybody's dancing, and you have to basically keep plugging away and keep a smile on your face and keep trying to get people dancing? It's the same type of thing, because when your team is getting shellacked and you're the mascot, I'm sure the last thing you want to do is, be the dancing clown and try to work the crowd, right? But you kept doing it.
But there is a little bit of applicability, because it switches from trying to do lots of stuff for a larger crowd on the main, like basketball is the big one, on the main floor. But you switch to working the crowd a little bit more and interacting with the crowd a little bit more, which I think is applicable for DJs, because you switch from, okay, this party is not going great, instead of trying to focus on getting a mass of people on the dance floor, let me focus on interacting with a handful of people and see if I can't draw in some influencers to help me get this thing kind of going. Right. As a mascot, you would get in the crowd during bad games and find kids and families and interact. And honestly, it was good. I got a lot of eyeballs, because I was mascotting for a bunch of really bad teams that people were like, this is brutal. I mean, 66-3 is just a beating in football.
Yeah, and I guess when you're sitting in the stands of a 66-3 game, you obviously don't need to pay attention to the action on the field anymore. So what else can I look at? And the cheerleaders and the mascot become one of those things. I mean, it's a distraction. You know, it's like either hit the road early or, hey, let's watch this guy, you know.
It was just hard because you're in a furry costume and again in Texas 100 degrees, so the heat factor is rough, but you just keep going and you just keep pressing through. I always loved the fact that I loved the anonymity. I loved the fact that people didn't know who it was that was in there, because it just made it fun to interact with someone without actually having to know each little detail of it. And especially kids, they light up about it, and all these parents are bringing their kids back to show them their alma mater, and they always want to get a picture with you. So there's lots of excitement and energy. I loved it. I loved the time, but it just, I was done with it after a point.
I never appreciated the hot factor inside of those outfits or costumes until a number of years ago. Rutgers obviously is one of the big colleges up here, and the Rutgers, I think their mascot is the Devil, the Jersey Devil, and he showed up at one of my weddings and he danced around, and we brainstormed beforehand, and he told me like 2 or 3 songs that he does. I had him lead a conga line, and then when he was done, I said, "Hey man, let's get a picture," because I wanted to use it in a blog, and I literally put my arm around this guy to get a picture, and I was like, oh my God, he's soaking wet from sweat. And it wasn't, I think it was a November wedding, so the room itself wasn't even that hot, but
and he was inside, and you could feel the sweat through that costume.
So outdoors on a hot day, I don't know how you got to stay hydrated, and I'm sure you're dying in there.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I didn't have a huge social life in college. It took me a while to figure out the whole talking to girls thing. But it was a good excuse to not go to parties, because I would get invited to stuff and I was like, guys, I got to go shower and rehydrate.
And it'll take me an hour to stop sweating. And yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, you were losing insane amounts of water. So
right.
You're drinking the whole time, you're drinking water the whole time, and still having to spend a significant amount of time afterwards rehydrating, because you're losing so much liquid.
Can't imagine. So when we recorded this 2 weeks ago, I asked you for a prediction for the Cowboys season. You and I are both pretty big Dallas Cowboy fans, and I think you said 11-5 at the time.
No, I thought I went 10-6. I think I went aggressive at 10-6.
Well, you're lucky enough that the recording has been lost to whatever technology, so I can't go back and check. But all right, 11-5, 10-6, and I said at the time I think we were going to play 500 ball, so 8-8, maybe 9-7 if we're lucky. Now, since then, some news has broken, and specifically, the Cowboys all of a sudden seem to be in the eye of the storm of this national anthem, kneeling, staying in the dugout or clubhouse before coming out. In that, Jerry Jones has come out and said that any player who kneels or doesn't come out for the national anthem can be cut. I think he even said is going to be disciplined and maybe even cut. And our quarterback has said he will stand and respect the flag. So so first of all, does that change your prediction now that the Cowboys are going to have, I think, a little bit of controversy around them if some of their players decide to continue the protest and kneel? Does that change your optimistic outlook?
It absolutely does, because I think that so it's funny, we did the podcast, and then
I think it was literally the next day, because I texted you and I'm like, want to change your prediction, Glenn? And
I did.
Yeah.
And really, because with Jerry and Stephen Jones coming out and saying truly as much as they did, and being so much on the attack for something that the NFL was already struggling with, and the NFLPA is already struggling with, the NFL had already set rules and guidelines for the teams to follow, and then Jerry and Stephen are coming out and saying, no, we're going to go hard. We're going to enforce this thing beyond what was already agreed to. I think it's a huge distraction for the players. I mean, why are they having to talk about this in training camp when they should have blinders on, thinking about this season in football? And we have the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, which I hate to say those words, but we have them in our conference. We have to play them twice.
Right.
We have to get past them to go anywhere. We need to be focused on them
Right.
And, maybe the Giants get better. I don't know that the Redskins get better because I think their coaching situation is a little nutty, but, and also, racist shirts, but whatever.
Well, and they also let their quarterback go, which it blows me away. I mean, Cousins, right? Cousins. And I don't think he was the greatest quarterback ever, but to me, he was an above average quarterback. And how do you let and he obviously knew your system because he played there for a couple of years. How you just let a guy like that walk just blew me away. The
Vikings are tickled pink to have him.
Yeah.
Tons of guaranteed money. They saw a lot of value in him. But switching back to the Cowboys, I think that what Jerry and Steven are doing, I think it's a massive distraction for their players that they don't really need to be involved in. Those guys need to be.
Well, let's face it. If you politically know the situation, basically Steven and Jerry are agreeing with our president, and they're playing into that. And I've heard Jerry say that he's heard Donald Trump say that this is a winning platform for him. Donald Trump knows that when he makes a statement about players kneeling down and disrespecting the flag and disrespecting our military, that it's he's playing to his base, and a lot of his supporters and even people in the middle kind of agree with Trump on this and disagree with the players. So it is, whenever this situation comes up online, people ask me, well, what would you do if you had DJs who, for some reason, were protesting something at your events? Let's face it, they're working. They're not on their own social time. So I know this is kind of thin ice, and if you don't want to go there, feel free to kind of gloss over it. But how would you answer that question? If there was some local protest in Dallas that a couple of your DJs wanted to get involved in, and by doing so, they were, I don't know, kneeling down during the first dance. I'm just throwing out a stupid scenario. And then that was getting LaForce bad publicity. Would you attempt to squelch them? Would you attempt to fine them? What would your reaction to that? Or would you just say, hey, man, it's free speech. I might not support the cause, but I support the First Amendment. How would you handle that situation?
Man, my gut is super conflicted on that because luckily, unfortunately, what we do, I think there is a massive separation between a private event performing, which is what I would coach my DJs on, why it's inappropriate to kneel during the first dance, because this is someone's private event, not a public event. I mean, when you've been to a Cowboys game and they pack that place with 95,000 people, that is a absolutely public event, televised, massive platform versus our DJs, 100 people trying to send a message that's absolutely going to get lost. I think that it's just a real. So I listened to a podcast, How I Built This, from NPR Guy Raz, and Arthur Blank, the former owner of Home Depot, now the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. He was discussing it, and I really liked his take on it because he talked about the fact that, and I share this, I don't love the kneeling during the national anthem. There's still for me a little bit of a disconnect on that section, but Arthur Blank touches on, first and foremost, that he loves this country and I love this country, and impeding on someone's First Amendment rights is for him a non-starter. Mm-hmm. So for him, he doesn't love the kneeling, but he doesn't want to take away from people's First Amendment rights. I think for us, Mike, the discussion I'd love to have with you is more around as an owner, how do you think about it? Because for us, we look at it, and I've seen a lot of DJs posting online and posting on some of the stuff that you post on Facebook about, well, he's the boss, he's the owner, he can just fire them, he cannot pay them, he can do this, he can do that. But for me, as a Cowboys fan who grew up in Dallas, loving the Cowboys, I think about, okay, but when we go into free agency in 2019, mm-hmm. there are a lot of incredibly talented Black NFL football players that I would love to come play for the Cowboys.
Right. And if you're on record and let's face it, even before that, if the threat is you kneel and we cut you, what happens if Dak Prescott kneels? Now, he's on record as saying he won't, but are we really going to cut our starting quarterback because of a controversy. Like, now maybe Jerry would, but you think about talent and what your ultimate goal is to win football games. Are you really going to cut one of your main guys just to send a message? It would be kind of crazy. But in the same vein, ratings were down last year. Now, when I say ratings are down, believe me, the NFL still has more. Any sport would trade for the NFL's fan base. Any television show would take the NFL's ratings. So it is down, but it's down pretty marginally. But it is down, and you could say that maybe this issue is one of the reasons. So if these owners are seeing something that they used to have a monopoly on getting chipped away, I think that's the main reason they're reacting. If ratings weren't down and people supported this issue, I think owners would just say First Amendment, let the players do what they do. And
I think that Jerry truly believes that players should stand for the national anthem. I think that the other side of it is that he is a really good shill. And so I think some of this and going to the press is he wants to get a lot of those MAGA supporters to buy into America's team.
And believe me, Glenn, because I posted about this on Facebook, and a number of people who hate the Cowboys said, hey, I'm going to have to start rooting for the Dallas Cowboys now. So a number of people who are on this side of the issue and don't like the Cowboys, all of a sudden Jerry Jones is a hero. So yeah, I mean, there is something to that. And let's face it, Texas is a red state, right? I mean, you guys always go Republican, so he's basically playing to his base down there. I would dare say that if you polled every Dallas Cowboy fan, most of them trend conservative and red. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I would say that's a.
But then again, I would say that about most NFL fans, not just the Dallas Cowboys. I think most the demographics of your typical NFL fan probably trends conservative and red, I would imagine. Just like the I'm sorry to cut you off, but just like if you polled most Broadway theater goers, they probably trend liberal. I don't think that's making any kind of horrible stereotypical statement, is it?
It's not, but it's with this being Texas, for people that haven't been to Texas, people that haven't been to Dallas is actually a very diverse, accepting city. We have a very large and strong gay population that has a wonderful parade, and they have a section, a neighborhood of Dallas that is highly embraced, that people love. So it's not the city that people associate with the JFK assassination. And so while a lot of the season ticket holders at AT&T are definitely going to fall into that vote red all day, every day, Trump supporter, etc.
Dude, I've been to AT&T Stadium. If you don't have a pickup truck, you ain't getting in. Like, they literally, if you showed up at AT&T Stadium with a Prius, they would throw you the hell out of there. So just the vehicle demographics alone kind of tells me a little bit about your typical Dallas Cowboy fan, and of which I am. So I feel like I can make that. I mean,
you've seen it. Jerry shows up in a helicopter. Like, we're tailgating, and he comes in his helicopter, and that's how he gets to the game. Right. But I was going to say, there's also this massive Hispanic population in Texas that diehard loves the Cowboys, that absolutely does not vote red. So now they may not be buying seat licenses, but they buy a lot of T-shirts and a lot of swag. They watch television, and they bring a lot of ad revenue from that regard. So
ultimately, do you think Jerry hurt his cause or helped his cause, or it's neutral? And when I say his cause, I mean fan base, ratings, popularity, all that.
I think he helped ratings. I don't think that it helped popularity, because I think that you have a lot of I still feel, and I know that we all associate other people with ourselves, but I think that there's a whole lot of me's out in the world that are more centrist than the TV would let you to believe. Like, for me, I believe that we can disagree without being divided. I don't feel like we have to be so divided just to not agree on something. And I think that these are tough issues. And for me, I think that we need to do something about immigration. I absolutely think that we need to do something about immigration, and we need to create a much better process, and we need to have a better process for getting people out that should not be here. At the same time, we shouldn't be separating children from their parents. I have a 4-year-old.
I would agree with you 100%. I think it's a problem that needs a fix, but that's the wrong fix. I think I think most decent people could agree with that.
And so I think that, and I think that also, like for me, when Kaepernick started taking a knee, if you look at my Facebook, when Kaepernick started taking a knee and I didn't fully understand why he was taking a knee and kind of what his message was, I was super against it. I'll come out and admit that I was super against it. But in the light of today and the information that I know today, I understand that I can't speak for a life that I've never lived and a struggle that I've never had. I have a number of black guys on my team, and I love them to death. And to hear them tell their stories about being pulled over by a cop versus me, it's, very simple. They get my license and registration. They don't ask me a lot of questions other than, do you know I pulled you over?
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
And so to hear them tell their stories, I'm just like, God, what is this world that we live in?
Yeah, I give Kaepernick respect for this reason. First of all, it's cost him his career, no doubt. I mean, if you take the kneeling controversy away, he would have gotten an opportunity with another team after he left the 49ers. I mean, He had a Super Bowl appearance on his resume. His career may have been trending down, but so was RG3, and RG3 got a contract with the Cleveland Browns, so who are still, by the way, in the NFL, if you can believe it or not. But so RG3 got another opportunity. Kaepernick didn't. And I think the only difference there is that Kaepernick was involved in this kneeling down controversy. And I'll give him credit for this. It's cost him his career, but if his goal was to make this part of the national conversation, he's done that. Now, I think there's a great job of diverting it by saying, oh, if you kneel, you disrespect the military and you disrespect our flag. I disagree with that because that's not what Kaepernick was trying to do all along. He wasn't disrespecting our military. His point was, I can't stand up and salute the flag when I feel there's injustice being done to people of color, especially by law enforcement. Now, you can agree or disagree with that statement, but that was his message all along. It wasn't, I don't like our military, that's why I'm not standing up.
And so to bring this back, Mike, the argument that I would make to any of your listeners that are very strong in favor of what Jerry and some of the people are doing about being against kneeling during the anthem, my point to you, and especially for those of you that are DJ owners, is this is the same as having DJ employees, and that I want these guys to want to stand for the anthem because they love and are proud of this country and what it represents. And just like with, it's easy for us to jump into a spot of, as business owners, to say, well, if my DJs did that, boom, gone, whatever. Or they, and not even,
right.
we don't have a great equivalent for kneeling during the national anthem. But, our DJs do some knucklehead things sometimes, but a lot of them are highly compensated employees for what we do. And an element, we need them. And I want people that want to work for me. You and I had a discussion a couple weeks ago in SoCal about the fact of, for you, we're aligned there in that we want our DJs, our employees, to want to work for us, not just to come simply because we give them a paycheck.
Right.
Because we want our events to be amazing. I want people that want to be at my clients' events and want them to have a spectacular, wonderful time. And that's the same thing with when we're talking about all this NFL stuff, is I want great players to want to come to play for the Cowboys, and I want us to be a beacon of light, and I want people that want to be here. I want people that want to be in this country. And a lot of people get stuck on talking about the wall and stuff like that. I'm like, these people want to come to this country not to commit crimes. They want to come to this country to seek a better life. So isn't that kind of the American way?
Dude, way to tie it together, Glenn. That was well done. We were starting to go down this path. I'm like, how am I going to bring this back to business and DJ? That was beautifully done. If I wasn't holding this microphone, I would literally give you a round of applause. Great job. So why don't we end the podcast with, I know I asked you to prepare this, so hopefully you've got something. Can you share a piece of advice? You have been extremely successful as far as I know you. You've built an amazing company down in Dallas. I haven't even given you an opportunity to give your resume, but anyone that's interested, look up LaForce. They are kicking ass down in Dallas and really have done tremendous things in a short amount of time. What can you offer our listeners, piece of advice that has helped you be incredibly successful?
to listen to your people, focus on your people. The more you, and I fell victim to this over kind of mid 2017 to a few months ago, of getting so focused on how do we grow and how do we scale and how do we do those things to be able to drive more revenue and all those kind of things. And at the end of the day, what I realized was the more you focus on the events and focus on your team, the more you focus on the micro level, the macro level stuff tends to kind of figure itself out, because we all think that we need to have this recipe for, to how to build this company that does this. But if you cook, or if you have a spouse that cooks, or if you ever watched your mother or dad cook growing up, cooking is all about little things, getting the right amount of salt, not too much salt, not all the salt you have, but getting the right amount of salt into whatever it is you're making and getting this spice. And so, really a lot of DJs, and I see this in my own market, I see DJs that want to grow from being a single op to a multi-op, and they go post an ad on any job website, and they go try to hire 3 or 4 or 5 people to come onto their team to be DJs. And then the cycle repeats in about 6 to 8 months. I see them posting that same thing again, because they wanted to hire people and expand, and they didn't have enough events, enough work to keep those people busy, and by turn keep them happy. And so they train people, and then they lose people, and they start all over again. Versus if you focus on hire one DJ and build them and get them up and moving, and then deal with the next one. Don't worry about, for me, we have 20 DJs. Don't worry about trying to be a company with 20 DJs.
Right.
Just trying to be a company with another DJ and keeping them nice and busy. Not just they're doing an event once a month. Try to get them working as much as possible, almost every weekend, because they're going to be super happy and they're going to generate more referrals.
All right. Great stuff, Glenn. Appreciate it. So
Thanks,
I'm gonna ask you a shameless question. Were you on at our first PhDJ workshop or the second one? I know you're a graduate. You were at the very first one. So first of all, thank you. It was very. We had no road. We had no reputation at that point, and no roadmap to look back on, and no people that had graduated already to say it was worth it. So it was a leap of faith, and I appreciated it. It showed a lot of faith in Joe and I. Tell the listeners who might be considering going to our workshop in March next year, what did you get out of it? Hopefully there's some positive things, and would you recommend it?
I absolutely would recommend it. Keep in mind that the year that I attended, my company was already decent big. I think the first year I attended, we did $1 million in revenue that year. So, decent sized company. And I took away so much from this conference. And the thing I love about it is, and now you're doing it in Vegas is the next one, right?
Yep. We'll do it at the tail end of Mobile Beat. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I took it in Raleigh, which Raleigh is an absolute wonderful gem of a city. I obviously love Vegas. But the conference is just so valuable because you have Joe and Mike just opening up everything, which is huge, because as a DJ and really moving from the level 101, 201 stuff to the 301, 401. For what we do, you guys do a good job of bringing it into a classroom setting, because you come in and show the result, but you talk about what you do, which is incredible because you tell a story in the way of education so that people can kind of put themselves in those shoes to figure out, okay, I may not want to do this piece, but I do like this element, because some of us, may know other like for me, I had a few other DJs early on that I could recruit from, and some people just have to start from the ground level. And it's two great masterminds in that, you guys complement each other very well, because Joe is incredible when it comes to sales and marketing, and you are incredible. You're good at sales and marketing, but you're incredible when it comes to developing DJs, back of house, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really good yin and yang, which is, I'm glad you guys recognize that, because it's, a lot of times, and you see this with companies that partner up and DJs that partner up, and they're both front of house. And when you have two front of house guys, all they do is just bang into each other, stepping on each other's toes.
There's a phenomenal movie, was out probably over 10 years ago, called Big Night. It's a restaurant movie, and it's two brothers who open a restaurant. One is the amazing chef, and he's the back of the house guy. He cooks the most incredible. And then the other guy is the perfect host, perfect maitre d'. And it just, the dichotomy between their two talents is amazing. And I think Joe and I had that a little bit. And a lot of our attendees, our past attendees, have said the best part of the workshop is when he and I disagree. When there are things that he does differently than I, because you get a chance to see both sides, and both sides are successful. I mean, he's got a great company down in Raleigh. We're doing very well up here in New Jersey. So there's no right answer, and you get to kind of pick and choose. Oh, maybe I'll have my DJ sell for me. Let me listen to Joe's way. Or let me just have a few people in the office selling. Let me listen to Mike's way. So there are a number of different, and if you are a regular listener of this podcast, I'm sure you've heard those things.
We have AV lighting and production, and I will tell you, there are times, Joe Bunn, I miss you being on here right now. There are times that I hear Joe Bunn on my shoulder talking about how he just focuses that. Yeah. I can hear Joe Bunn in his country accent saying, that's why I don't mess with that stuff. Because he's smart. He focuses on his little spectrum there of the DJs and just a tiny bit of lighting, and he makes them all really good. And if you ever get the opportunity to be in Raleigh with Joe Bunn, it is like being at Cheers with Norm. Yeah. Because
everybody knows him.
Everyone knows him. Yeah. I mean, that first conference, we're there, and that was really where I met Joe.
Remember that we were walking down the street, and these two ladies, hey, Joe, we were like, you set that up, man. There's no way that happened, but it did. And I've been to Raleigh now with him a handful of times, and I think it happens every single time. Yeah. I mean, it's a smaller town, so that he's got that going for him, but he has done an amazing job of getting his own brand out there and his own name. Yeah.
But I think about it in terms of, and if any of your listeners are other DJs in Raleigh, I put myself in your shoes and I'm like, damn, like this guy has established himself. He's been here for so long. He's kind of the DJ mayor of this whole region. Yeah. And he's just because he connects with people, and I want to bring this back, by staying in his lane and focusing on what he does best, all of the other vendors in his market love him and refer him because they know that he's not going to kind of drift over into floral or offer planning, or he's going to stay in his lane, and they love that.
All right. Enough kissing Joe Bunn's ass. He missed this episode, so hopefully he listens back. He doesn't listen back when he's on, but so hopefully he'll listen to this one and hear us kissing his ass. Glenn, thank you very much. I know you're on a business trip with your guys. Please tell your crew I said hello. I love those guys. I look forward to seeing them all again. I just saw Nate and Ed out in California, so it's always great to see your crews.
We'll see you in Vegas if we don't.
I will see you in Vegas if not before. Glenn, thank you for filling in for Joe. I appreciate it.
Love you, brother.
Have a great one. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the PhDJ Podcast with Joe Bunn and Mike Walter. The PhDJ Podcast is brought to you by Electro Voice, and Roland. For more info on their workshop and how you can take your business to the next level, visit PhDJWorkshop.com and follow them on Instagram at EarnYourPhDJ.